alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We've seen the statements by the COAS as far as tolerance and unity is concerned. He called for tolerance and unity and of course against terrorism and the fitna, and of course asking the nation to unite against such elements in society. We've also seen the call for protests, the peaceful protests. Of course, he advocated for peaceful protests, stating that while people have the right to protest, it should be done peacefully. We'll be talking about the ramifications of the recent statements as far as the political process is concerned. Of course, we've also seen the Prime Minister talk again also of national harmony and cooperation, echoing what the COS has said. He's also praised the COS speech. Of course, he also talked about the economic crisis. We'll be talking about all of these statements in the light of the recent political situation, particularly with regard to political parties, with regard to the May 9th, with regard to the events after, and all of that today. On Perspective, I have with me Brigadier Retired Waqar Khan, who's a defense analyst. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Zahid Gishkori, who's a senior journalist. Thank you for joining us. And a little later on, we'll have other guests in the program. Brigadier Sahab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Brigadier Sahab, there is these statements, of course, you know, have come in the light of the political situation, it seems. And of course, you know, for the COS to call for unity at this time, I think, you know, we've also seen events in other parts of the world. We've also seen, you know, their overall, the things that have been said by various political leaders. How do you look at these statements at this time?
The occasion was also important because they were addressing the ulama. There's definitely need for unity within Pakistan. And then there are changes coming up in the region. We've seen what has happened in Bangladesh, how the state responded, and how then it was toppled by the students because of high-handedness of the students. Pakistan has its own unique challenges. As you know, we've been discussing it that it's Afghanistan-Pakistan border, which is still, you know, not stabilized. India on our east is always looking for opportunities. And then definitely there is a kind of, I would say, political polarity which does affect. And then, of course, basically this was, I think, the background that he wanted to highlight, that one chaos, whether it is from legal point of view, constitutional point of view, or Islamic point of view, it doesn't suit any country or nation, because then it can lead to anarchy, and anarchy can lead to, you know, destruction of nations. We've seen what happened in Syria, in Iraq. We've seen what happened in Libya. Basically, things started from, I would say that information was weaponized to create chaos. So definitely one was, you know, that we can always, there is always room for peaceful protests, democratic dispensation, and freedom of speech. But in case somebody is trying to exploit a situation to create chaos, that is the. And then Pakistan is also facing terrorism. Because if you look at past 2.5 years since the Americans left, there's been spate of violence in Balochistan and in KP especially. And Pakistan Army and law enforcement is already fighting.
Let me go to Zahid Sahab on this. Zahid Sahab, with regard to the recent political situation, we've seen, you know, there have been talks and there have been this communication between, you know, political parties and the opposition, particularly the opposition, and we've seen, you know, one particular leader say that they, you know, only wanting to talk to the army, the rebuffs there. How do you look at that? Can you please, sorry, Zahid Sahab, can you please unmute, because, you know, I can't hear.
Sorry. First of all, thank you very much, Mahrukh, for taking me in your program. We have been discussing this issue consistently in your program. Particularly previous week, we were discussing this, but the unity message came out from Chief Minister, the Prime Minister, and later on from Chief of Army Staff. The unity in a broader perspective, if we discuss here, if you look into the previous 2 days development in Saudi Arabia, where OIC meeting took place, this is very important, and unilateral response came out from Muslim countries. Again, the between the quoted words that genocide committed by Israel in Palestine. Uh, this is a very strong and powerful unilateral response, but look what OIC is doing, what lacks over there, and even the majority Muslim countries' response have little productive, powerful unilateral response when it cope to what exactly going on in the Middle East, particularly Israel is doing in different countries, particularly in Syria or in Lebanon or in Yemen, uh, and what happened in Iran. It's in a perspective way, if we look the things into a different way, just with Muslim community. And today, when we are discussing this, the Imam of Holy Prophet Mosque here in Pakistan. He was also in the parliament. I was over there, and then he offered prayer, Friday prayer here in Festival Mosque. The response came out, and the message particularly, and then in a little way, what exactly in our society is. If you look into the response in capital today, there was a protest against the ruling given by country top court recently, and a very important issue. If you just go through the judgment released by Supreme Court of Pakistan, it was released in Urdu language as well. The commonly everybody can go through it, and the message and perception by some segment of the society giving a louder message. It revealed that the problem begins not with a whimper, but with a bang in the society, that some element who don't understand exactly the ruling and the constitutions and what exactly the judges were saying about the judgment uh, is not clear to those, either deliberately by the segment of the society, some segment of the society, or perhaps they have little knowledge about the Sharia and the message of Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, the message of uh, Holy Prophet, I mean, the book.
Ji. Zahid sir, let me. Gee, I think there's a problem with audio. Let me come back to you. I'm going to, we also have with us Javed Jadoon, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us, Javed sir. Javed sir, let's talk about the relevance. I think Zahid Saab elucidated, quite succinctly what we've seen as far as the world is concerned, as far as the region is concerned, and those changes and their impact on our own politics at home. But in terms of our, reconciliation that we've talked about whether political parties can coexist and, within the ambit of the purview of the power that has been given to them by the people. That itself, is there any chance of that kind of accord now proceeding forward, moving forward? Or you think that, this now has probably, it's one of those things which are unlikely considering the recent climate?
Thank you very much, Mahrukh. I think before coming to your question, let me briefly comment what one of the talkers just said. Equating Pakistan's situation with the Middle East, with Syria, with Lebanon, and with Gaza would be extremely, I think, unjust, because what Army Chief was stating, the two different things he emphasized. One was that you can go and demonstrate peacefully, well, because it's a democratic country. Nothing is barred as far as demonstrations are concerned. So far, they are peaceful. Secondly, he was referring to the violent extremism in Pakistan, that it is a threat to Constitution and Sharia as well. He mentioned particularly the Khawarij, who are out to destroy the fabric of Pakistan. But nothing of the situation like Bangladesh prevails in Pakistan. Bangladesh is an entirely different situation, where a very brutal ruler, Hosina Wajid, suppressed the voice of the people of Bangladesh, and they rose against her authoritarian and tyrannical rule, and she was toppled. It wasn't the students' uprising because they wanted to create chaos in the society. It was Hosina Wajid who was responsible to create chaos in Bangladesh, and ultimately she was overthrown, and then she had to flee the country. She was an asset of India, and she went back to India. and India lost one of the most important allies as far as Hasina Wajid was concerned. And secondly, when he talked about Syria, he talked about Lebanon or the other Middle Eastern countries who have been destabilized. His point was to target the armed forces of Pakistan would kind of inflict damage to the institution. And what he meant was, if there are weak armed forces, then you are definitely vulnerable to a situation like Syria, like Iraq, like Lebanon, like Yemen, and like Gaza. So I think it shouldn't be prudent to equate Pakistan's situation with those Middle Eastern countries. Now, coming back to your point, what you highlighted, I think the political parties need to understand that it is a very powerful country, nuclear armed country, population 250 million people, and most importantly, young population. 70% population of Pakistan is a young population. They have got their own aspirations, their own desires. They want to get settled down in the society after they complete their education. They are looking for jobs. There is a definitely very diminished public sector and very diminished private sector as well. So job provision has become an extremely important factor. You keep on harping one theme or the other as far as the political parties are concerned, their leadership is concerned, for their narrow-ended political objectives. But what really happens today, you are in a position, tomorrow you come into a power, you become the government of the day, and the government of the day becomes the opposition. Then what are you going to do? Because the constraints imposed on any government are so enormous in Pakistan that there is a constraint of resources, there is a constraint of trained human resource or skilled workforce, and the capacity to produce jobs in the private sector as well. So I think what Army Chief was mentioning, we need to understand what he was talking about. He had a very holistic approach of Pakistani society, and I think we need to differentiate between the two different approaches he talked about. He was talking about, on one hand, the kind of upheaval is going on in the Middle Eastern world, where the armed forces were weakened to the extent that they were not able to defend the country. So he was trying to equate the situation. Unfortunately, it mustn't take place, because we have seen, he talked about the social media, Mahrukh, as well. He said social media is spreading the fake news, disinformation, misinformation. And he said, particularly said that social media is targeting the institution of the army. And if you hit the army, then you weaken the army. And then what really happens? Then he said that then you can't avoid a situation like Lebanon and Syria and other Middle Eastern countries. So I think it does make sense because political dissent is not an issue in any democracy, be that Pakistan. It is not a question of dissent. He said that, well, people can go, they can protest peacefully, but when you are not peaceful, you try and create a kind of a law and order situation. You challenge the authority of the government of the day, the parliament, the constitution, and Supreme Court and other courts. Then what really happens? The country becomes ungovernable. In today's world, countries don't disintegrate, they don't disappear, they become dysfunctional. And we have seen the examples of some of the Middle Eastern countries, and those countries have become dysfunctional. So I think, God forbid, we don't want Pakistan to become dysfunctional. Pakistan is a vibrant society, and mostly, Mahrukh, don't forget, Pakistan's majority is a liberal-minded people. They are not conservative to the extent that they have a very narrow spectrum of the definition of religion and a society which is a tolerant society, a forward-looking society, a modern society. And look, the urbanization, the pace it has taken upon. And
where do you think things are headed on the political front in the light of what was said? Of course, it was a speech that, like you said, of course, highlighted the importance of the armed forces in, strengthening a country and being the shield against outside, threats from outside, which are integral to any country and its own authority, its own, integrity, its own constitution, and there's no denying that. But as far as the political process is concerned, do you think there's going to be some movement, or do you think that things are going to remain the same largely?
Mahrukh, I don't believe there's going to be any violent movement in Pakistan. I'm talking about the political upheaval or the societal upheaval where you could rattle the system of the country. Because I think most of the political parties have been part of the government in the past, and even today they are part of the government. For example, let me take the example of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf is part of the government right now. They are ruling an important province, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They may be thinking about themselves as an opposition party, but on the contrary, they are part of the government. They are party in government as well. In Punjab, there's Pakistan Muslim League, and at the center there's Pakistan Muslim League. In Sindh, there's Pakistan People's Party, and in
talking to the opposition. That's what I want to come to. Let me come back to you on that. I'm going to include Brigadier Saab on this. Brigadier Saab, do you think that there are chances that there can be, we were talking about talks, we were talking about whether there can be some kind of, agreement to exist again within the purview of their own authority within what has been given to them by the people, the mandate. Do you think that there are chances that that will happen, or do you think that, again, we are going to be looking at, again, this kind of an exchange perhaps between different political parties?
I think as far as political parties are concerned, there's always a scope. If PTI can talk to Maulana Fazlur Rahman, who were dagger drawn, and if you know the kind of words they were used against Maulana, it was really very, very demeaning. And today, the same was from JUI against the PTI. So if they can sit, I think they can always sit with the larger parties like Pakistan People's Party or PML, and that I think military is tried to remain out of it. The political discussion, rapprochement or reconciliation should be within political parties. I just wanted to clarify on Javed Jadoon Saab's point. I think discourse is similar to what he said, 100%. Maybe while you were interpreting it, you saw it differently. I also feel that he hinted at basically, and Pakistan Army has also suffered. If you look at 9th May, it was a big event. An effort was made to weaponize the information and then assault on the state, assault on garrisons, assault on Shohda's monuments, and then there has been delay in prosecution. Which is very, very dangerous because in case any other political party picks up that precedent, they can start doing it somewhere else. So it never stops. So mainly I think there was also a hint at basically legal system being slow, and there's a need. And if you look at how garrisons are protected across the world, US, India, you can't even shout on a sentry standing outside a garrison. You'll be charged and then they'll talk it later. So it's they are protected properties because and we are in a war time. Like in Bannu, there was a terrorist attack followed by a protest, and the protesters then breached the same space and tried to assault and incite violence. Actually, there have been 3 attempts to incite violence. I'm not saying that Pakistan is like Bangladesh, but probably the political party wanted bloodshed, like in 9th May on Tufail Road, in Bannu, and then in Gwadar also. A limited attempt was made. One of our soldiers was he was martyred. So basically there is an attempt to just find a trigger. Inshallah, it will not be quite. One, Pakistan Army is strong enough law enforcement, and I think, as Javed Saab mentioned, it's basically a liberal society, liberal conservative, and we understand. Now coming on.
Brigadier Saab.
Yeah, reference to what happened. Because I think Hamid Ji did mention about two-nation theory and how the narrative built up by Awami League India has been now drowned in Bay of Bengal, and that's very important. That, as Javed Jadoon Saab mentioned, it was indigenous, uprising because of suppression. I have been in Bangladesh for a year. I did a course there, and I have some insight into how the society behaves. And so I'm sure India's investment has actually drowned in Bay of Bengal, and inshallah. Definitely, Bangladesh will emerge out of this crisis very strongly. So he did mention, because there was one political party who was now equating Sheikh Mujib as a hero. They were trying to literally turn upside down the narrative because he was the one who was responsible. And today, Bengalis have proved it by, bringing down his monuments and statues. And Hasina Wajid had to leave. So it means that probably Pakistan was right and we wanted to remain united. Whatever, because of political decision making and then military action.
We seem to, we are vindicated. One looks at the events and the way that they happened. Let me go to Zahid Saab. Zahid Saab, let's talk about the political situation. Also, the role of social media, which the COAS highlighted. in, leading to a lot of false information, a lot of propaganda, and the use of it by different political parties. How do you look at that?
Look, Mahrukh, in these all political paradoxes, what happens, what happens when an unstoppable force uh, in Pakistan, particularly, meets an impossible mode, and this is the paradox of politics. Pakistanis asking about this question in the past 2 years, uncertainty, chaos, stalemate among all key stakeholders. This is one of the biggest stumbling block in Pakistan for economy and the challenges the state of Pakistan is facing. You are talking about the social media and the curb on freedom of expression and the lies like floating an ocean on social media and the government move to curtail the uh, critics, particularly on these platforms. These are all discussions and criticism everybody is talking about. Uh, it seems that both sides are responsible when it comes to deal with social media, the freedom of expression, and the vox populi, the term popularly known in Pakistan that government is always hitting hard on the social media activists. But on the other side, when we look into the PICA law and many other things in the past 2.5 years, the Pakistan Cybercrime Authority received almost 500,000 complaints in the past 2.5 years. And and the most of the complaints are about the uh, not about the individuals and the head of the institution and the criticism. And there are so many complaints that it means that the people are talking and talking. They are they just want freedom of expression, freedom of media and everything, but most of them forget that this freedom comes with responsibility. Laws are here. We always talk about new laws. We always talk about the implementation about the laws. Laws are absolutely here. These are lethal laws, but we don't see the implementation in a real sense. Number one, you are also a barrister. We have been discussing such laws at this forum. More than 2,000 cases are in different courts, but recently government designated 3 to 4 courts in provinces and in the federal capital as well to deal with such laws. But in a debate when a narrative is being built, which is not good for the state otherwise, because the narrative based on lies, baseless education, allegations against the institutions or the head of the institution. I haven't seen any such criticism openly against the head of the institution or the head of armed forces or the country top judge anywhere because there is an implementation. Strict laws are over there everywhere, here in Pakistan as well. But here, uh, mostly people get away with crime. And this is very unfortunate. And every government, I have seen it that they try to use the institution against their political opponent, and they never empowered the institution, the department dealing with the welfare of the state, or trying to regulate.
We talk about this. That's very important, and I think I want to take your opinion on this. I will come back to you. Let me also include Javed Saab in this. Javed Saab, we talk about the fact that, again, I think the COAS also, and we've seen delays in prosecution. hurdles that we've seen as far as procedural hurdles are concerned, or whether legal issues that stem from a weak system, so to speak. And we've seen that happen. We've seen that repeatedly with regard to you and I, the man on the street, we all see it happen in our everyday cases when we as far as prosecution is concerned. But as far as these cases, for example, even May 9th, they highlight our problems within our legal system. But when we talk about changing things, when we talk about amending things, when we talk about those amendments that are crucial to bringing about the kind of changes that we want to see for an efficient legal system, we have to go to the parliament. The role of the opposition becomes extremely important. The numbers become important. In this scenario, will things change then? Unless we have opposition which is willing to play ball, which is willing to be effective in the role that has been given to them, and sensitive to what is needed. And again, like Zahid said, what is needed for the government today will maybe be needed by another government tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I totally agree with you that the more responsibility lies on the government of the day. In any democratic society, government takes the lead, but there's equal responsibility on the opposition as well, because they're all important stakeholders in the system, because as I earlier said, today's opposition is tomorrow's government. But Mahrukh, let me make an important point, that let us not be over pessimistic about Pakistan's future or Pakistan's current, because the political dissensions and political paradoxes, as was pointed out, are part of every society. There is a very scary situation going on. Look at what is happening in Europe. We are much oblivious. What is happening is much more scary. What is happening in Britain. The far right is targeting Muslims and the immigrants the way they never did. There's a liberal government in power who has come into power with 2/3 majority, and the Prime Minister Starmer is basically right now in the spotlight because he has to fulfill his responsibility maaf kijiyega, to protect the Muslims and the immigrants as well. What has happened in Italy? Giorgia Meloni has taken over, and she is the most extremist prime minister, after Mussolini. And what has happened in France? Marine Le Pen almost was there. She almost reached the corridors of power, had it not been on part of the liberals and the leftists, who at the very last moment forged an important coalition, and they withdrew some of the the candidates, and ultimately they made it very difficult for Marine Le Pen to come into power. And there's a German far right as well. So I think when we look at Pakistan, one, we are too pessimistic. Three, we are always cast doubts about the future of Pakistan. I'm not talking about this discussion, but I'm talking about the holistic discourse in Pakistan. We love, negativity in Pakistan. We talk about the future of Pakistan, the democracy of Pakistan. We talk about the establishment and so on and so forth. In how many countries, Mahrukh, people talk about the role of establishment, and which single country one can point out where there is no role of the establishment? I was posted in India for 2 years. You can't even imagine how important role there is as far as the establishment is concerned. Nobody even mentions in the private conversations about the role of the establishment. They participate in the general elections. I was there in 2008 when the elections took place. They go out and cast their vote. They come back. They never even talk about politics. It is so unfortunate, Mahrukh, that even the people on the street, they always talk about what is there. They talk about the doom and the gloom and the unpredictability of country's future, Pakistan's economy, Pakistan's politics. I think we need to at least look the one good story, one feel-good story. Pakistan won the gold medal, the whole nation united on one single point, that, Arshad Nadeem, he was able to give the country what country really needed at this particular hour. So my point, Mark, very simple point, that these are the very difficult times for Pakistan, but not the kind of a pessimism which is expressed in general discourse in Pakistan. It is really, really unfortunate that we don't even see what is happening, as was pointed out, what is happening in the Middle East, and now the kind of a danger which far right is posing in Europe and in Britain, never seen before in the history of the European continent and even Britain. But nobody's, I mean, moralistic point of view, they talk about, about a third world country when there is some kind of upheaval, or when there are, very slight examples of human rights violations. But what is happening in Britain, the worst kind of human rights violations are being committed, and government has been silent spectator. Ultimately, the Prime Minister Starmer came on the scene, and he made it very clear that, well, there is a police force, there is law and order, and we will go. They then started barging into the homes of the extremists. So I think I was trying to juxtapose Pakistan with the rest of the world, which is much more scarier than what is happening in Pakistan. And very brief answer to your question, I think the politicians in Pakistan are mature. Notwithstanding the incidents, the unfortunate incidents of 9th of May, never should have taken place, because you never attack your armed forces. You never target your armed forces through, physically or through the social media. Happened in Pakistan. At least I think it is about time. They must think about it. They must, step back whatever they have been doing, because you damage.
I want to come to that. Do you think, I'm going to go to Brigadier Saab with this. Brigadier Saab, do you think we can take a step back from this discourse, which has been dangerous, which is clearly against the state of Pakistan, and no sane person can support it? Do you think we can take a step back from it and perhaps rein this kind of, anti-Pakistan not movement, but the kind of comments that come in, the way the social media is used against the state of Pakistan? Do you think we can go back from here?
Yeah, I think as far as perception, narrative, and battle is concerned, there is a role to be played by everybody. For instance, media itself, then the government of the day, and then the opposition parties as well. And I think Pakistani political parties are also learning. But if you look at the rhetoric now, even with the PTI, unfortunately, its social media was, I would say, hijacked by people from abroad. And maybe there was some, I think, misconception that probably this is how they could just get, like 9th May. Before that, there was, a complete campaign for 6 months, assaulting, on social media against the military leadership, and then it came on rank and file. And then came the 9th May with a weapon. Like, Trumpsters assaulted the Capitol Hill. And I think go with the Javed Jadoon. I'll just give you an example of missing persons figures. Registered figures are, let's say, 2,000 plus, 290 something. And in India, there is 350,000. In United States, every year, 6 lakh people become missing person and 1 lakh are not traceable. That is their average. So, but when it comes to Pakistan, there's a lot of I'll say it should be 0, but humanly it's not possible because there's a war on terror that we have faced. There are people who would cross over to Afghanistan or neighboring countries and then come as terrorists, and they are also included.
But in terms of the responsibility that is needed, and there is that responsibility from political parties. Are we going to be getting that?
I think some of political parties not understood the power of social media. Like Tofflers had predicted in, I think, late 90s that it would, like what happened in Bangladesh, that they'll be very difficult to govern. So probably they have to understand how to use social media for coherence and unity, and also the opposition. As I think Jadoon Sahab mentioned, that today's opposition could be tomorrow's government, and they'll be in the same shoes. And it has happened. Like at times they had to eat their humble pie because whatever they were doing, in governance, now in opposition, it's totally very different. So probably it's an evolutionary process. I think social media challenges are universal. Everybody is facing it. If you look at riots in London or what has happened in, let's say, Bangladesh, what has happened in rest of Europe, even in US, it's so much polarized. At times looks like there are two warring camps. So maybe they'll have to learn it and use social media definitely for a constructive discourse.
And to change things for the better, to awareness which is going to lead to betterment for the country. There's no denying that. Zahid Sahab, what about the role of clergy, role of, our intelligentsia, and in mobilizing this kind of awareness towards, you know, the kind, of course we are, like you said, fairly moderate people, and you know, there is not the kind of extremist element that we see in other parts of the world. Do you think that we can have that kind of role, you know, the positive role that we need our intelligentsia to play, our clergy to play at this time?
Yes, Mahrukh. Look, obviously, it's need of the hour as we go through the uncertainty prevails over the country during the past 3.5 years. Obviously, now I think all political parties have already been struggling, but as I mentioned earlier, that the stalemate uh, continues, and unfortunately, the all three major political parties failed to develop the consensus to get out the mediative or to find any solution to the state challenges. But one thing we should talk here, and we have been discussing the role of judiciary in Pakistan. Well, let me to go to recent example. What was happening in UK, in London, in the past 2 weeks. We have been covering, we have been overseeing, observing all this, and within a span of 2 weeks, that hundreds of people were arrested who were allegedly involved in violence, different kind of violence in UK, and within a few days, that judgments was coming out from the courts, and some people, more than I think 3 dozens were convicted in a very few days. And what happened in US, just a year back, and a few of supporters of a political party attacked Capitol, and they were convicted in a few weeks. But here in Pakistan, we take the example of 9th May, that more than 14,000 people were arrested, and majority was from a political party. It said that, and then, even though right now thousands of people are in the jail, and almost uh, 14 months have been passed, and the Pakistan Supreme Court, there is a very important case pending. It is a long pending, and it looks like that it's a very crucial because Supreme Court has to decide either civilian could be tried in military courts or not. Uh, so discussing this, I can't pinpoint categorically here, but uh, uncertainty on the part of institution, uncertainty and the weak government in the center. This is very unfortunate. In the past, two government, in particular the third government now, this is a weak government cannot take any decision, because Pakistan need very strong government, at least with two-third majority, to take the decision uh, to get out the challenges the country is facing. And this is the only reason that with weak government and the weak decisions, and uh, and uncertainty and the chaos and stalemate among different stakeholders, is only the message that's suffering. And this is the time that there should be a mediative way out. Some people should come out. There should be a sort of a supreme council representing across the party line, across the institution, and sit out and come up with any charter of democracy, charter for the state, charter for economy. There could be anything like that. Otherwise, there are strong indication that the weak economies are struggling and facing violence and facing revolution, like what happened in Bangladesh, though its economy was very stable in the region, but the government was quite weird, and that's what happened. That is sort of revolution otherwise. And what's happening in UK, in different other countries as well, and the situation in the Middle East, conflict in the region, and chaos in the with two bordering neighbors. So
Right,
it's very
Javed. Ji, Zahid Sahab. Javed Sahab, if you've heard what Zahid Sahab has said, I mean, it's hard to disagree with what he's saying. Your quick comments in this regard, and of course, we have to, of course, see the change all over the world, the way things are happening in other parts of the world, and how to at this time ensure that our country remains, every institution we've seen as far as the parliament is concerned, the political parties also need to understand that they can only act within the purview of their mandate, and the opposition has to act within its mandate also.
I think, Mahrukh, in Pakistan, the political parties are not fighting against each other on the basis of their ideologies. They have no ideologies at all, to say the least, as far as Pakistan's political structure is concerned. Every major political party, look at their manifestos. There are so many similarities, almost 90 to 95%. What they are fighting for is the share of their power. They want to have a share in the power as far as every major political party is concerned. They are fighting for their own vested, narrow interest. They're not fighting for the people of Pakistan. They're not representing the interest and aspirations and desires of the people of Pakistan. Not a single political party, be that in the government or in the opposition, is thinking about 250 million people of Pakistan. Where I pointed out that where 70% of Pakistan's population is the young population. Does any political party have the kind of agenda to cater to the needs of 70% young people? No. More than I think about 40% of the children less than...
Right, Javed Sahab, unfortunately we're out of time, but Brigadier Sahab, your quick comments as far as, I think that we've seen the government embark on a challenge as far as economy is concerned. We've seen the government, take it up. We've seen the Prime Minister again and again talk about economy and how important it is for Pakistan at this time, the youth and its empowerment. So all of those things, but for any government, it's going to take time, and we need that kind of resolve and confidence to ensure to see it through. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I think challenges are definitely. We are in a poly crisis, mainly because of economy, and if you look at people's inability of the government to really give that real relief. Even you look at the IPPs and the way it has been exploited, and it's I think everybody's I would say issue, because you have to pay electricity bills, and then is of course youth migrating to other countries. There have been, I think, massive...
in unity, we can actually steer the country and ensure that we are, on the road, and perhaps it's a long one, but at least we've started down it. Thank you so much for being with us, Brigadier Waqar Khan. Thank you for joining us. Javed Jadoon Saab, thank you for being with us today. Zahid Gishkori Saab, thank you for joining us. We saw the comments of the COAS. We know that, they highlight the concerns at this time as a nation that Pakistan is facing. They also highlight the resolve of the state of Pakistan to ensure that Pakistan is on that road to recovery. Pakistan is kept safe from all those elements that can cause harm to the state of Pakistan, and to ensure the well-being of its people first and foremost. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.